Lady Lexy, and I'm pledging to spread the word of inclusion. And the reason I'm doing so is that it's not okay when people are being left out of opportunities or being left out sitting on their own, or whatever the reason is, just because they are different. I actually am teaching people to speak out. And for those who are not capable of speaking out themselves yet, I usually do the talking for them. And well, one of my major goals, my mission, is to leave a legacy. I want to do so by getting primarily business owners to learn to communicate better. So that will affect their staff, and not only their staff, but also their family, and hence also their children, and also the family of their employees and their children. Well, of course, I'm not just working with business owners. I actually guide those who I call the young people, who are, say, in their late 20s, early 30s, mid-20s maybe, who are not capable of finishing their studies because once they have to be an intern, that's when they walk into all sorts of problems, and maybe they even already walk into all sorts of trouble when doing their exams. I mean, there are a lot of young people out there nowadays who are highly sensitive, whether it's because of autism or because of ADHD, but all these stimuli there, that's just too much for them. And I actually speak out for them, so they get the chance they deserve to finish their studies and figure out how to become a useful part of society. Usually they know what they want to do, they just don't seem to fit in or fit up to the standards of whatever the people want from them, as in their employers. And there are a lot of things possible as long as people get to understand one another. So why is one person reacting the way he or she does, and what can the other do to prevent that, basically? Well, of course, there's more to inclusion than just not being able to follow along, as in the guidelines, the structures, or whatever there's out there. There's also, of course, the part of bullying. So when I was asked just recently why I said my why is related to #inclusion, I said, well, I know what it is like to be left out. I was bullied at school, early on. I'm Dutch, and my father was like 6'6", as in 2 meters, blonde with, by the way, green-brown eyes. And my mom is the Indonesian one, hence the color of my hair and my eyes. So in the Netherlands, that was not normal. When I was growing up, which was in the 70s and in the 80s, there were not many people like me. There was one other Indonesian guy, Dutch Indonesian, just like me. By the way, he was really popular. And then there was a girl who came from Suriname. And we were the three ones who basically were different. And I didn't really know how to deal with this. As a matter of fact, when looking at pictures, I was always surprised that I was the one with the dark hair and the dark eyes. Of course, nowadays, all that's different. I mean, with all the people migrating over to the Netherlands, there are so many people out there who look like me, which brings its own set of challenges, I might say, especially when the guys look at me and they're like, oh, she's not wearing a scarf and she's looking me straight into the eyes. Oh, it's fantastic what happens. I can tell you, but that's an entirely different story. But when it comes to bullying and when it comes to inclusion, we recently, and I really feel sorry for this girl. There's this girl called Frederique. She's 14 years old, and just recently she got bullied up to the point that she actually had a broken nose and a broken jaw. And why? Because the other boys, because they were 14 years old as well, couldn't tell whether she was a boy or a girl. And in this time, it shouldn't matter anymore. But apparently they thought differently. And so they, when she got asked that question, and I have to admire her for that answer, and I also have to applaud parents for having taught her this, she actually said, I am who I am, and you can be who you like to be. Regardless of what she said, because she didn't answer their question, she got hit upon, and apparently she has some broken teeth, and like I said, there's the problem of the broken jaw and the nose. And the most wonderful thing is she's not even mad at them. She doesn't want them to be really like thrown in jail for I don't know for how long. This is about being understanding to one another, and I guess it really shows how parts of our society, and I mean in general, are, they're liberal in their thinking. And I always get a little bit, I don't know how to say this, but in our country it's normal. There are gay people, there are lesbian people, and there are bisexual people. And nowadays with the young ones, there are those who don't define themselves as either a boy or a girl. And that's the way it is, and that's okay by me. I always have a blast whenever I'm with one of my friends. I'm not lesbian, but lots of people think I am. And because I'm not, I'm actually very comfortable around the ladies, as in I don't mind giving them a hug or, a kiss on the cheek or whatever it is, because I know they won't be hitting on me anyway. So also being a therapist and having and a medical fitness trainer and giving massages, not the sexual ones, but the actual massages to get people to improve their movement. I'm so used to touching skin and feeling the muscles and the movements, and whenever needed, I'll help put a joint back in place, although it can be a lot of work, and you really need to know what you're doing. But anyway, getting back to inclusion, quite honestly, I hadn't heard that word before. I mean, in the Netherlands, in the Dutch language, we don't have an translation for inclusion. Maybe they would say it's like capturing it all. That's the best way I would have to translate it. So I had to look up, what is inclusion? What do they mean by it? So at first I read about the development issues, whether they were born with brain injuries, or whether it was during development. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then, okay, autism is part of that. Well, I've had and still have several clients with autism, so I know about it. And one of the reasons they really like to work with me is it depends on who it is. Some of them, they are, you know, when they're done, and that's good because that means I've done my job. But there are also out there who value me because they just can say stop, and I'll stop. You know, I don't need the please can you, no, just be straight with me, be factual, and that's okay. So if someone in a conversation were to say shh to me, I'm not offended because I know why it's being said. And usually I already observe my clients during the meetings to see what's going on. I also always ask for feedback. You know, if I represent them, I want to know if I'm doing it correctly. And also I want to know what I could have done better. So it's a learning process for me as well. And let's face it, the spectrum of autism is huge. It's immense. So going back to the inclusion and people being left out, that's something I know all too well. Like I said, I when I was growing up, I was this daydreamer. I think it already started at kindergarten. You know, my first memory was like I was 4 years old, and I had this postcard from my great aunt, and I just kept throwing it to one another. And I was like, what? And you know, I'm the youngest one in a family of 5, 3 kids. I'm the youngest, and I didn't get it. I totally didn't get it. So from early on, I was very withdrawn, and maybe that was also the result because when I was a little baby still, as in 9 months old, during the festivities, the holidays, I was put in hospital for a month. And coming from a household where my mom used to play the piano like 3 hours a day, my sister was 1 year old and my brother was 4 years old. Well, you can imagine that was kind of shocking. And you know, back in the days, as in early 70s, things were different. You know, it was a sterile environment, and well, if they didn't have the time, then you were laying there, you know, in all your remains, and well, have fun with it. So apparently I didn't even want to eat until my dad showed up. Anyway, when I went to high school, I was a metalhead. And well, there were 4 people in total. And we were with, I don't know, I think at least 300 kids at school. Maybe more. But anyway, 4 of us were metalheads. I was one of them, you know, was wearing the scarves and the leopard pants and all that stuff. So I had this drawing box, and on it they put, you know, from Twisted Sister, that one, yes. Which actually is kind of cool, but, you know, back then I didn't really understand it. So my huge turn, my huge shift was actually when I was about 17 years old. I was doing, well, we have during the holidays, you can work at an office because others are away. And that's what I did. And this guy came up to me and he said, okay, what do you want to do? And it was funny because at 17 years old, I already started working in IT, which later I came to do for another 2 decades. But that's an entirely different story. Okay, so I'll go back. And for those wondering, yes, I've got that huge H, which is from hyper. And I so badly want to tell this that my mind is going all over the place. And also, I think it's a little bit exciting. You know, I was like, oh, am I really going to make a pledge? I don't know what I think about it. And the only reason I did so was because I actually got to witness a video or to watch a video where someone did it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I wanted to know more about it, and it all sort of came together at the right moment, at the right time, because I was reading this book, Built to Serve by Evan Carmichael, and he actually talks about our why. And my why is, of course, as you now might have understood, related to being rejected, not being seen, not being heard. And yeah, so I thought it was hashtag speaking out. I'm also creating this course, from silence to speaking out, but I guess inclusion is actually a better word, hashtag inclusion. So yeah, that's why I'm actually recording this video right now. As for having experienced these things when I became an adult, literally 7 years ago on this day, I twisted my ankle on a brick, and as a result I couldn't walk anymore. I couldn't stand on my left foot. I couldn't sit with a laptop in my lap because it just hurt too much. So basically I couldn't do much, and it took me well over 4 years before I got my second surgery. And it wasn't until this summer, as in this year, until I finally was able to walk again without my crutches for, say, a mile. And to get there, I had to speak to so many doctors and physical therapists, but also repeat myself time and time and time again, because they didn't understand what I was talking about. And well, hence why I had to find a second doctor who, and the surgeon, she knew, she understood me. And, you know, all this searching, but also the consequences of it has led me to need to speak out, not only to the doctors, but also to get the assistance and the help I needed. Because whenever I would go to, say, get on a flight, I wouldn't be able to carry my suitcase because I needed both crutches. And well, I actually missed a flight because of it. That's a totally different story. It's a funny one, by the way. It must be somewhere in one of my videos. Just look for Barcelona airport. And well, if that wasn't enough, I was finally, you know, all was getting better. And then like a month or 2 months ago, I lost a little bit track of time. My knee caved in, so I thought I needed a third surgery and possibly a fourth, but I got a second opinion again, this time a lot quicker. I didn't wait for 4 years. I actually only waited for like 3 or 4 weeks, maybe even less. And we are going to get a different approach, or take a different approach, which I personally like. And hopefully that will regenerate the cartilage in my knee, and things will get better. And also I will get a brace, so I will be able to walk again without my crutches, because I've got this body, and it requires balance, you know. If I use crutches, then the upper half of my body will start to cave in. If I do everything with right, then left is getting, I'll put too much strain on the left side. So, and the second surgeon actually understood that. So I was so happy. And that same thing applied to the second surgeon who actually did the surgery on my ankle at the end of November 2018. So yes, I know the importance of speaking up and speaking out. And I also know that it's not appreciated. And just recently I was at the GP. I had to get some blood work done, and my car was literally parked in front of the door. And normally I would put it at a disability parking spot, which is a little further walking, but I didn't want to use my crutches at that moment. So I was like, okay, if there's a spot right in front of the door, I'm going to park there. And there was. And then right at the moment that I wanted to get and ask a question to the people behind the desk, some other couple came in and they started to talking about the problems they had, which is fine by me. But I needed to know if I had to get my crutches from the car, because when I'm standing too long, it's going to hurt. And I don't want that. So I don't know how I got to ask it, but I asked the guy, do you know if this conversation is going to last longer than a couple of minutes? Because then I need to go to my car and get my crutches. And he just looked at me. He was totally surprised, in shock, appalled. And then I looked at him and I said, and without any emotion, I said, that's a question. And I literally said it like that. And then he exploded. How do you dare asking me this? And what do you think yourself? And I said, well, that's the result of pain, which it is. So I got to my car, I got my crutches again and walked back. And we still have to wear facial mask when we are at the GP. Well, it's not really obligated, but yeah, we are supposed to, and I keep forgetting it because, freedom, we don't have to wear them anymore except over there. So I've got one on my backpack, so I kneeled down, to get mine, and at the same time I was talking to someone else behind me, and that was such a big difference compared to what happened before. So when I had to go into the waiting room and I was walking with those crutches, at the same instant, people already got up so I could sit down. And that was such a big difference, compared to what had happened earlier, as in less than 5 minutes before they got up, with that guy being all angry with me daring to speak out to him. Who the was I? And not to be really, I'm going to say it like it is, those who look like me but who are not from Indonesia, there are a lot out there who are very conservative and they don't have the Western values. So please don't get mad at me for saying this. It's a fact, and it's known. So and unfortunately, they think that I'm one of those liberated persons, and they are not used to women speaking up or speaking out. And well, that's what I had to do. I didn't even have a choice for the last 7 years. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And of course, now working with all these clients, it's standard practice for me. But getting back to inclusion, I guess that was one example where it didn't apply, or it should have applied, but he didn't know about it or didn't want to know about it. I don't know. But the funny thing was that when I was in that waiting room, the girl who got up for me with her husband, actually, she was in her 20s, and she told me that just like me, she had EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means that you're hypermobile, and she was wearing this brace on her wrist, and then she also had back pain. And the moment that she stood up and she said, I need to walk around anyway, with my background, I could tell that had to be her lower back. So I asked about it. So you can choose whether to sit or stand, and it will hurt both, which was correct. And then there was another lady who had this fractured ankle, and she was in her 60s, And I'm pretty sure I talked to someone else as well. And I was like, yeah, that's the opposite of what that guy actually did. So apparently for 2021, the word is connection. And what really spoke to me was when in the description of the two young guys, I really have to look up their names. I wrote them down somewhere. Tim Shriver Jr. and Suren Palumbo. I don't know if I say it correctly, but they apparently are the founders. They started this movement in 2009. But they spoke about how people are sitting all alone and are on their own. And yeah, that it hurts when I hear those stories. And I don't know, maybe because of it, when I'm in a waiting room, I usually see what's going on. Well, that's me, that's one of the reasons I'm both a coach and a therapist, because when I'm somewhere, so not when I'm in the midst of walking somewhere or cycling, but when I'm sitting down, I actually pick up all those little things which are going on, which is why I absolutely understand all those things about people, getting all those stimuli and not knowing how to deal with it. So I just talk about it, and I make a little joke or see something, and and people actually appreciate it. That's what I've come to understand. And the funny thing is, now I'm really going off topic, is that my dad, that guy who's 6'6", who used to be 6'6", he used to have a toy store, and I've been running it for 8 years after he passed away, until my mom just recently passed away, and my sister said, now you're going to close this shop. And I was like, okay, enough of that. I think that's the only time I really got really emotional. Well, I got it a few times, and that I really started screaming. Yeah, but it's always emotional times when someone dies close to you. And I had come over there like 5-6 days a week. And oh my God, I don't know why I'm telling you all of this. I wasn't planning, I was just planning on doing this pledge. And here I am and sharing my whole story. Anyway, whereas my dad used to talk to everyone, and share his stories about where he traveled. My mom was actually the entire opposite. As said, she's the one who came from Indonesia, so she's a little shorter than I was. And, back in those days, people were actually beaten up, and not so much to punish them but also for the sake of their protection, how strange that may seem. Because if you were to do certain things, that could kill you. And both my parents actually lived through World War II. And my dad did so when he was in Holland, and my mom did so when she was in Indonesia. And you really ran the risk of being caught in the street, maybe even being raped, tortured, killed, if you were out there and you were spotted by the wrong people. So I hope this video is not too confrontational. I keep forgetting there are people who haven't seen that side of humanity. But, well, we all know it's out there. And, well, so for her protection, she wasn't allowed to go out, hang out with my dad, by the way, by that time. Just imagine this, she was 14, he was 22 years old. But anyway, they got married, and well, like I said, I grew up with being bullied because of my color, the color of my skin. And to my surprise, I learned that actually the generation before me, or the generations before me, who came over in the 50s and the 60s, they actually were confronted with this too. And the same nicknames, no, not the nicknames, that's not a good word. The words they used to, there were certain words they would call us because of our color. The same names and phrases were used for those who are actually a couple of generations older than I am, as they were for me. And you know, I was stunned when I found out, which actually was like a decade ago, that I learned that the same words were still used by the, yeah, I guess the white Dutch people among us. Anyway, and you know, it's all the result of not understanding one another. I don't even believe that it's intentional. I mean, same with the guy who got so upset at the GP, despite what I said before. It's normal in the culture, and it's shocking for them to see what happens whenever they come over here. And of course, the longer people are over here, the more they adjust, and you know, the next generation always sees different things, and so, you know, things improve in time. So yeah, but my mom, she was afraid for being bullied, for, and actually for worse, you know, when something were to happen, like kids playing soccer in front of the store, the house, we had these huge windows, and you know, if a ball crashes into that window, then it's broken. And she always said, no, not going to say anything, whether it was about that or, you know, whatever it was, water coming through the ceiling, you know, all that stuff, because she was afraid of how people might react and what they might do. And I guess that fear for some out there is one of those main reasons why they don't say anything. And of course, there are also other reasons, and that's simply because they do not know how to say anything, or because people didn't listen, and at some point they got to think, you know, this is costing me way more energy to talk about this in comparison to just shutting up. But you know, it's like Pandora's box. At some point that box will open up, and then it won't be able to close anymore. And then when people get upset, they really get really angry. And I guess when we are reading about parents, especially men, fathers killing their entire family, I guess that's a result of them not being allowed to cry, to complain, to show their emotions, to tell other people what's bothering them. And I actually have heard words along those lines from clients, that they said, I could kill the other one, and I'm not going to, but you know, and I could understand why they were so full of rage, and that's why I'm trying to teach them. Please don't wait to speak up. If you don't agree with someone, speak out, but don't keep it in. You know, that's dangerous. So, getting back to it all, Yeah, I pledge to spread the word of inclusion because it's very dear to me. Well, you now know why. For me, it's related to being authentic, being unique, you being allowed to be you, whether, you know, you shouldn't be the odd one out, even when you're different. We should all embrace one another the way we are and not exclude other people just because they're different and you don't understand them straight away. I mean, just walk up to them and try and see what they're like and how to find that connection. Well, if you agree with me, then take the pledge as well. Go to spreadtheword.global and record your own pledge on video, or just write some words down and, you know, and send them so they can post it. I believe it's about time this was happening. And of course, in this past year, we have seen the major differences, and I guess they're getting bigger and bigger. And quite honestly, it's, again, I'm Dutch, and to me it's weird. It's weird to have learned that people might think differently just because of the color of the skin of a different person. And of course, I know I got bullied because of my tan too. But I don't believe that has had much to do with being less worthy, as it had to do with being... I actually believe that a lot of people were afraid at first, because with the dark eyes, they're more piercing, and especially my mom's eyes, they were, you know, in her passport, they actually wrote down black. It was brown, but they wrote down black. But that could make a difference. I don't know. My grandmother on my father's side was the one with the freckles and the red hair, so, you know, and the blue eyes. So I look at it differently. But yeah, I'm glad that things are now showing and that we get to talk about it. On the other hand, I also see that with the internet and all, that now that we've got cyberbullying, that it can work against us. But for me, the internet actually has brought a closer connection to all my friends all over the world, you know, especially those on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. And I can say how grateful I am that, especially in times like these, we are still able to connect with other people. I mean, I come from a time that there was no mobile phone and that we could call other people. But, you know, it did cost money and there wasn't much money when I was growing up. And, you know, calling abroad, that meant, you know, losing connection. That was way before the satellite. There were satellite telephones. Those were the only ones with stable connections. And so I guess that was way before we had satellite television. Yeah, I want to say because that's cool, because that's when I got to be more acquainted with the metal community all over the world. So that was cool. Anyway, again, pledge, please take the pledge to spread the word inclusion, and tell why it is important to you and what you're going to do to change the world. Because whatever action you take, no matter how small it is or how big it is, I mean, I only got to see it because there's an actor out there who talked about it. His name is Jason Begay. He's from Chicago PD. He plays a character in there. And I love that show. I love One Chicago. But, you know, he's doing it maybe on a major scale, and I'm not. I do hope one day that lots of people will be influenced positively by my actions, because I do believe that if you get to change one person, like I said, it will influence lots of other people and hopefully generations to come. So they actually said that there was this calculation, it's on the site, you have to look it up, about how many people can be reached if one person starts. So again, no matter how small, whether it's, you know, someone at your school, or maybe you are the adult and you see it with your children, talk about it and, you know, give them the good example of how things can be different. And if you have trouble speaking up or speaking out yourself, and you feel you're the one who's left out and not being seen, don't be afraid to change it. Don't feel like you're worth it or you've deserved it. No, you didn't deserve it, and you may be different, but you're worth it too, to be included. So that's it for now. I'll talk to you later. And remember, go there, spreadtheword.global.